Rise of the European Emperor by Taishan Laonyo.
Chapter 21 Cohorn Mortar. Because the attack on Jever was going to be a battle, there was a high probability that they would encounter a tough battle. Therefore, it was very important to prepare special large-caliber siege artillery. In fact, in this era, in addition to the mainstream breech-loading bronze cannon, flanger cannon, there was also a large-caliber, short-barreled and very ugly cannon, the mortar, which was also an important component. The mortar was a short, thick and ugly cannon, and its initial velocity was very low due to its short barrel. However, its caliber was often large. A large caliber means that the shells are heavy and very powerful when they are hit. Generally speaking, mortars are the main force in sieges. Because the caliber of the Franco cannon is too small, the small iron ball can't make any waves when it hits the wall. But the mortar is different. Even if the initial velocity is not high, the weight is there, and it will make a huge muffled sound when it hits, and the stone can be easily broken. Moreover, because it is a high-angle shooting, the trajectory of the mortar is very tortuous, similar to the mortar of later generations. In fact, the mortars of later generations were developed from mortars. The castle of Jever was investigated by spies under Saul, and it was built very solidly. Of course, there was no bastion structure to prevent bombardment. The bastion structure appeared in Italy in the early 16th century, mainly thanks to the Italian War. Because France is a major artillery country and can deploy hundreds of artillery at a time. In order to resist bombardment, the Italians invented the bastion structure. Then, the bastion slowly spread to other parts of Europe. But Jever's castle obviously did not have a bastion structure, it was just an ordinary castle. But even for an ordinary castle, Marin's main gun, the front-loading 3-pound gun, was difficult to blast open, even if it was replaced with a 6-pound gun. Because, whether it is a 3-pound gun, a 6-pound gun, or even a 12-pound gun, they are all field guns, suitable for battle formations. If it is used to bombard the city wall, it seems insufficient. Because the weight of the shells is too small, and the kinetic energy is not enough when they collide with the large stones that build the city wall. To give a simple example, at the same speed, a small stone hits a person's head, which at most hurts a little, and at most swells up or something, but if a lead ball hits the head at the same speed, the head may explode immediately, and the person will die on the spot. Therefore, whether it is siege or naval battle to bombard enemy ships, the larger the caliber of the artillery, the greater the destructive power. In his previous life, Marin had watched a military program on BTV, which was translated from the United States and talked about field artillery. In fact, Marin's 3-pound gun data also came from the program where the American Lee Ermey introduced the history of field artillery. Even the barrel length of 0.65 meters was introduced by the American host. Marin was very impressed by the program about hitting watermelons with artillery shells, so he remembered a lot of content. In the program, a special gun was also mentioned, the Cohorn mortar. The Cohorn mortar is actually a mortar. It's just that its shape is better looking. According to the American Uncle host, the 24-pound Cohorn mortar has a caliber of 14.7 centimeters and a range of 1,000 meters. It was invented by the Dutchman Baron Cohorn in the 17th century, 1673. Because it can fire large iron balls weighing up to 24 pounds, it has amazing destructive power. Even if the initial velocity is not high, such a large iron ball, hitting the city wall, is also earth-shaking. Moreover, it is projectile, hitting from above, and can also cross the city wall to hit people in the city. The most important thing is that this mortar weighs only 82 kilograms, is made of copper, and is very light. 2 soldiers can easily carry it everywhere. When marching, it is also easy to carry it around in a carriage. Speaking of which, it is shorter and lighter than the Karen naval gun that Marin ordered to develop. However, it is precisely because the gun body is too short that it cannot be fired horizontally. Because the shorter the gun body, the lower the initial velocity. If the initial velocity is low, the shell will fall not far from the muzzle. Therefore, it is not suitable for being used as a naval gun on a ship, but only for land warfare. Because, when fired on land, the Cohorn mortar can transmit the recoil to the square base at a large elevation angle, and then to the ground. And how stable is the ground? Therefore, after firing, the Cohorn mortar has very little displacement caused by the recoil. Even if there is displacement, as long as a line is drawn on the edge of the square base, the gunner can easily move it back to its original position after the displacement. After all, it is light, and the total weight is only 82 kilograms. But it is different on a ship, and the hull is shaking left and right on the sea. The hit rate of a naval gun is only 10% to 20% when it is fired horizontally within 500 meters. If it is fired at a large elevation angle like a mortar, who knows if it is possible to hit. Moreover, the hull is constantly shaking. The shaking has a great impact on horizontal shooting, and the impact on indirect shooting is even greater than the sky. Therefore, the Coehorn mortar is only suitable as an infantry gun, not a naval gun. However, because its shells are too heavy and have great lethality. Therefore, from 1673 when it was invented until the American Civil War, it was the main force used by both warring parties to attack. Although the Northern Army also had a more powerful super mortar that General Grant loved to use. However, that kind of heavy mortar, weighing 7 tons, is very difficult to maneuver on land and often has to be transported by rail. Unlike the Coehorn mortar, any carriage can be pulled around. Therefore, during the Civil War, when attacking city walls and fortifications, the Coehorn mortar was a very important attacking artillery. It is only 1501 now, and anti-bombardment bastions have not yet appeared. If Marin can come up with this kind of artillery that can fire 24-pound iron balls and can be easily pulled away, it would be a cheat. At that time, dozens of 24-pound Coehorn mortars are lined up. Which fortress can withstand a volley? It may take some effort to bombard Vienna. But is it a big deal to bombard the small castle of Jever? The solidity of the castle is also related to the strength of the family. Vienna is a fortress run by the Habsburg family, the top royal family in Europe, for hundreds of years. Naturally, it is very solid. Later, hundreds of thousands of Ottoman Turkish troops and many artillery could not conquer it. But what is the castle of Jever? It is just run by a small local family, the Wilmken family. Although Jever is not small in area, with hundreds of square kilometers, it is as large as the territories of many earls. However, it is not fertile here, and there are many swamps like other places in East Frisia. Therefore, the Wilmken family does not have too many sources of income, and can only rely on a small amount of arable land and a fisherman's tribute to maintain it. Therefore, they naturally do not have much money to build Jever Castle. The structure of the castle, according to the investigation of Saul's spies, is very ordinary. Marin estimated that if dozens of 24-pound Coehorn mortars fired at a point, it would not take long to blow open the city wall. So, Marin ordered the foundry to start studying the Coehorn mortar according to the indicators he gave. According to the data from the show that Marin watched in his previous life, the caliber of the Coehorn mortar is 14.7 centimeters and uses a 24-pound iron ball. In addition, the amount of its charge is said in the show to be 14.2 grams to 255 grams. However, this charge is for the granulated black gunpowder with a higher purity in the 19th century. Marin estimated that the current black gunpowder purification process is insufficient and there may be errors. But that is not a problem. After the gunpowder is prepared, the range can be tested and recorded after measurement. After that, the charge will be fixed. Even fixed gunpowder can be used to facilitate artillery aiming and adjustment. Marin did not force its total weight of 82 kilograms. As long as the caliber remains unchanged, it is acceptable even if the total weight increases to 100 kilograms. Because it is not difficult to lift 100 kilograms of things, and it can still maintain high mobility. It just so happens that the copper that Columbus and Draco bought from India last time has not been used up, and the tin bought from Cornwall, England for counterfeit silver coins last time has not been used up. It's just right for bronze cannons. Once the Coehorn mortar was successfully developed, Marin planned to get a batch of them. When the Danes were too busy to take care of other things, he would line up a row of Coehorn mortars under Jever Castle and use the 24-pound iron ball rain to smash the walls of Jever Castle in the shortest time possible, and quickly deal with the Wilmken family who were separatist here. Chapter 22, Food for Women Plan. It is another golden October. From mid to late September, the autumn harvest began in East Frisia. Because of the use of potash fertilizers and phosphate fertilizers, the rye in East Frisia is harvested earlier than in other countries. This year, with the addition of 18,000 young men and their families compensated to Marin by the Duchy of Saxony, there are sufficient harvesters. Therefore, the progress of the autumn harvest is still good. Moreover, through last year's labor, these 18,000 young men helped Marin to reclaim 35,000 ugrams of arable land from the swamp and planted rye in the spring. In addition, after the spring plowing, another 10,000 ugrams of arable land were reclaimed. However, because there was no time to catch up with the spring plowing, there was naturally nothing wrong with this autumn harvest. Now, the entire East Frisia has a total of 120,000 ugrams of arable land planted with food, not counting the 10,000 ugrams of arable land newly reclaimed from the swamp this year. Among them, Marin's nobles and soldiers owned a total of 35,000 ugrams of arable land. Marin himself monopolized 85,000 ugrams of arable land. This was the benefit of Marin's elimination of most of the original nobles of the East Frisian state. In that massacre, Marin killed most of the original East Frisian nobles, and their land was naturally taken over by Marin. The land of hundreds of nobles was concentrated in Marin's hands. And now it is the era of serfdom, and the land is basically in the hands of the nobles. Therefore, Marin suddenly owned most of the arable land in this small country. Although a lot of land was distributed, Marin made up for the number of fields distributed by transforming the swamp. And because the fertilizer factory produced a compound fertilizer mixed with feces, wood ash and fish meal and applied it to the fields, the rye yield per moo in East Frisia was very high, reaching 500 pounds per moo. Even oats with a lower yield per moo reached a yield of 200 pounds per moo. Among them, in order to raise horses, Marin specially allocated 5,000 ugrams of arable land for growing oats. This autumn harvest, 5,000 ugrams, equivalent to 60,000 moo, harvested a total of 12 million pounds of oats, which can allow thousands of horses in the country to eat oats. As for the 80,000 ugrams, 960,000 moo, of rye, it goes without saying that the average yield per moo is more than 500 pounds, and the total output has reached 480 million pounds. The 35,000 ugrams of arable land of the subordinates also produced a total of 210 million pounds of rye. As usual, they took out half of it and asked Marin's Chamber of Commerce to help sell it. This time, Marin didn't even have to take the grain abroad. Because this year, a drought occurred in southern Germany, and grain production dropped sharply. Marin directly bought 100 million pounds of grain from them, and transported them to the inland areas through the Ems River and the Rhine River, and then transported them to the south. Because of the famine, the price of rye in the German region rose from 1 pfennig per pound to 1.5 pfennig per pound, and it was also very profitable to transport it to the south. At least, the nobles under Marin could earn 1 pfennig per pound. So, they earned a total of 100 million pfennigs, equivalent to 1.666 million gold coins. Among them, Marin's brother Adler earned 100,000 golden gold coins. The rest of the subordinates who were given 1,000 uglums also earned about 50,000 gold coins respectively. Now, every autumn harvest, the nobles of the East Frisian state and the soldiers who were rewarded with cultivated land will fall into a carnival of wealth. Because too much wealth was obtained from the cultivated land, the living standards of these nobles and soldiers with land were directly improved by several levels. Even if they are both barons, and the area of their fiefdoms is far less than those of foreign barons. However, the barons under Marin's command all lived in great abundance. Therefore, the nobles of the East Frisian state collectively did one thing, that is, to expand the castle. Yes, for the nobles of this era, the castle is their face. Now that they have money, they naturally have to clean up their faces. The castle that Marin gave to Adler for free before, his sister-in-law Liv no longer looks down on it. Therefore, Liv, who is usually stingy, directly stated that she wanted to expand a new castle that is 5 times larger than the old castle, with a total budget of 50,000 gold coins. Other nobles also did the same thing and kept expanding the castle. This also led to the price of stone in East Frisia doubling directly after the autumn harvest. Marin wanted to recommend cheap and practical reinforced concrete to them, but his men did not trust this kind of building material that they had never seen before. Therefore, they would rather spend a high price to buy finished stone in Hamburg and Bremen than use cement. In desperation, Marin had to use reinforced concrete for his new palace. Moreover, cement and steel bars were also used in the expansion of the Auric Wall. Because reinforced concrete is more resistant to bombardment than stone fortresses, Marin did not build a bastion structure, but directly built the palace wall and Auric Wall in the old style. Then, shock-absorbing carriages became standard equipment for nobles in the country. However, due to improper protection or forgetting to oil, the shock-absorbing carriages of these small nobles often need to replace springs. Without waterproof paint, the springs are still not durable. Suddenly, Marin thought of his backlog of tin blocks imported from the UK. It seems that the springs can be hot-dipped tin to form a tin protective film. In this way, the springs will not rust easily. The steel in hot-dip tinning is also called tinplate. However, Marin thought that although tinplate is rust-proof, the tin protective film will be rubbed off. Once the tin protective film is scratched, the iron inside will quickly oxidize and rust. Therefore, the best solution is to hot-dip galvanize the spring to make it white iron sheet, galvanized iron sheet, which is not afraid of rust and corrosion, and is not afraid of scratching. But the problem is that Europeans have not discovered zinc yet. Even the people of the Ming dynasty have not discovered zinc yet. It seems that the existence of zinc will not be discovered until the late Ming dynasty. It seems to be during the Jiajing period, which is still a few decades away from now. In fact, zinc is very easy to obtain. Generally speaking, zinc and lead often coexist. Therefore, lead or often contains zinc. However, when smelting, it is always in a high-temperature environment of thousands of degrees. Zinc has a bad property, that is, the boiling point is only 907 degrees. Above 907 degrees, zinc will turn into zinc vapor and volatilize. However, as long as a curved condenser is added to the top of the reduction furnace, the zinc vapor will condense to form crude zinc. Then, it is melted and purified to form refined zinc ingots. In other words, it is just a matter of adding a condenser to the top of the furnace. However, for thousands of years, people often smelted lead, but they just didn't find zinc. As long as you find a lead mine, it will most likely contain zinc. At that time, you can improve the reduction furnace and get zinc. Off topic, the subordinates sold 100 million pounds of rye, and Marin himself harvested 480 million pounds of rye. Moreover, this year's rye does not have to be consumed. Because the grain harvested last year and the grain harvested the year before have not been eaten yet. So, Marin thought again and again and decided to take out 200 million pounds of rye and sell it in southern Europe. Needless to say, the price of grain in Spain has always been expensive, and the price of rye has been stable at 2 pfennigs per pound for a long time. The Italian region was originally a rich region with abundant grain production. However, because of the Italian War, last year we saw the French and Naples fighting to the death, which seriously affected the grain production in the Italian region, and many local farmlands were abandoned. Therefore, this year, there is a serious shortage of food in the Italian region. If a large amount of food is not transferred from outside, many refugees will inevitably starve to death. So, Marin decided to send or rent a ship to transport the grain to Spain and Italy for sale. 200 million pounds of grain, with the high grain prices in southern Europe, can probably be sold for more than 3 million ducat gold coins. However, Spain is okay, and the Italian region, after being looted and destroyed by the French, may not be able to come up with so much money to buy. So, Marin came up with a brilliant idea: food for women. Italy has a large population and many women. And Marin has more than 10,000 bachelors. These bastards now see women with green eyes. If it weren't for the harsh laws of the East Frisian county, these women would probably dare to drag women into the bushes at will. After Marin publicly chopped off the heads of more than a dozen guys who were messing around, this group of people became honest. But just suppressing it like this is not a solution. After all, they are normal young people and they also need women. As a ruler, it is indeed inhumane for you not to find a way for others and kill people. But Marin can't do anything about it. Society always needs order. We can't let these bachelors do whatever they want just because we understand them. As a responsible ruler, in order to solve the problem of too many bachelors in the country, Marin still thought of a way. Before, he saw the Crimeans selling Eastern European girls, so he planned to buy more. But now, Marin suddenly found that there were many Italian girls because of war and famine. Although it was unfair to Italian men for Marin to get Italian girls for his young men. But Marin was the leader of the East Frisian state, not the one who collected taxes from the Italians. So, I don't care about Italian, foreign, men. They don't pay taxes to me. All leaders with internationalist ideas are big sobby. So, Marin decided to start the Food for Women plan. Use excess food to exchange for beautiful Italian girls. What? You said that food can't be exchanged for beautiful women? I want to tell you, back then, during the 3 years of the disaster, a bag of rice could definitely be exchanged for a beautiful village girl as a wife. Not to mention rice, even sweet potatoes, carrots and other grains could be exchanged for a beautiful wife. And at that time, rice had to be handed in. Even if ordinary families had surplus food, they were all sweet potatoes, carrots and other grains. If you saved a lot of grains, then, congratulations, you would never be a bachelor in that era. As long as you can carry a load of grains to propose marriage, you have to choose those families that are short of food. No matter how beautiful you are, you can be exchanged for a wife. The same reason, during the famine in Italy. As long as Marin's men presented a sack of rye, those poor families would be willing to send their daughters. Don't think that this is cruel, in fact, it is a win-win situation. The family who sent their daughters, the girl may also have younger brothers and sisters, will survive the disaster because of this sack of rye. And if the daughter goes to a family that can afford to exchange grain for a woman, although the husband may not be outstanding, at least she will not starve to death and can survive. Your daughter is outstanding and beautiful. No problem, 1 sack of rye is not enough, then 2 sacks. In short, in the years of famine, there is no problem that a sack of rye cannot solve. If there is, then 2 sacks. A sack weighs only 100 pounds. Even if the price of grain in the disaster area is expensive, at 2 pfennigs per pound, 100 pounds of rye is only worth 200 pfennigs, equivalent to 3.33 gold coins. Even if it is 2 sacks of rye, it is only worth 6.66 gold coins. Damn, 6.66 gold coins can be exchanged for a beautiful country girl, and she is from a good family. It is much more cost-effective than buying from the Crimean Khanate. 200 million pounds of rye, there are 2 million sacks. If all of them were exchanged for women, even if they were exchanged for 2 sacks of rye for a beautiful girl, they could be exchanged for 1 million. Of course, even if Marin wanted to do this, there were not so many girls for him to exchange. So, Marin's plan was to sell most of the grain to the Spaniards and rich Italians. Then, take out a small part of the grain and go to the disaster areas in Italy, especially the Kingdom of Naples ravaged by war, to exchange for 20,000 Italian girls. The total amount of grain needed is about 2 million pounds to 4 million pounds, which is only a small part of the 200 million pounds of grain. The reason for exchanging thousands of girls back is actually to attract immigrants. In the inland areas of Germany, it is normal for men in serf families with many boys to not be able to marry a wife. With these extra thousands of girls, Marin can use them as bait to attract those who want to marry a wife but have no money, and tempt them to work for him. And I will be the one to reward the beautiful Italian village girl. But thinking about it, Marin suddenly slapped his head. I forgot about the 10,000 recruits in the Teutonic Kingdom. Those people are basically bachelors. So, Marin immediately changed the plan. The number of beautiful Italian village girls exchanged for food increased from 20,000 to 30,000. As for the imbalance between men and women in Italy, what does it have to do with Marin? He only cares about the soldiers and civilians who work for him. What does the foreigner have to do with him? Want a wife? Okay, join us and serve me first. At the same time, Marin promulgated the Prohibition of Marriage of Domestic Women decree in East Frisia. In order to balance the ratio of men and women in the country, before the balance of men and women in the country, Marin strictly prohibits any family from marrying their daughters outside East Frisia. If violated, the woman's parents, brothers and sisters will be directly imprisoned and demoted to slaves, lower than serfs, with no human rights at all. Even if the nobles want to marry foreign nobles and want to marry their daughters, they need to get special approval from Marin. Otherwise, the noble titles and fiefs will be deprived, and the whole family will be expelled. The decree will take effect immediately, and the official will announce the termination of its effectiveness after the bachelors disappear in the country. Chapter 23. Since there is so much food, let's raise pigs. Marin never thought that he would be troubled by too much food. Yes, Marin is now very distressed because of too much food. At the time of the autumn harvest last year, Marin stored a total of 500 million pounds of new and old grains and did not sell them. Then, Marin immigrated on a large scale, bringing the total population of the East Frisian county to 150,000. However, 150,000 people ate food freely, and only consumed 100 million pounds of rye in a year, leaving 400 million pounds of inventory. This year, the lower class of the entire East Frisian was very happy. Because there was really enough bread. Because there was too much food, Marin did not allow anything else to be mixed into the food. The Kohler bread mixed with straw bran also reduced the amount of mixing. 150,000 people ate 100 million pounds of food, and each person ate an average of 666.6 pounds of rye per year. What a terrifying number in Europe at that time. Now, the nobles of East Frisia have started a new business, that is, to exchange the stock of rye for wheat that is 5 times more expensive, and then eat white bread made from wheat flour. In other words, the wealthy nobles of East Frisia no longer like to eat rye bread, but instead eat white bread made from wheat flour, which is more favored by the nobles in the Middle Ages. Then, when eating white bread, they must spread enough butter and enough cheese. Unadulterated black bread was once the favorite of the nobles and soldiers of East Frisia. However, after they became rich, they disdained to eat black bread. Only by eating wheat bread can one show one's identity. This is really the thinking of the local tyrants. In fact, Marin knew that although black bread did not taste good, it was better than white bread made from wheat flour in terms of nutrition. However, he could not stop his subordinates from being local tyrants. After all, when people have money, they always have to show their wealth, otherwise, they will feel uncomfortable. Just like Xiang Yu said, if you don't return to your hometown when you are rich, it's like walking in brocade clothes at night, who knows it? The same reasoning applies to these nobles. If you don't eat white bread when you are rich, who knows that I am rich? Not to mention the nobles under them, Angela and sister-in-law Felice also think that it's time to eat white bread every meal. After all, other royal families eat white bread every meal, and we still eat black bread, which is too cheap and does not meet the status of a rich man. Then, Marin followed the crowd and ate white bread, dipping it in butter and stuffing cheese into his mouth. But, don't you worry about getting fat if you eat like this? Not to mention the rich people who have a lot of food in their homes, Marin himself has accumulated too much food. Last year, 400 million pounds of grain were stored, and this year, 480 million pounds of new grain were stored. Putting aside the 200 million pounds to be sold in southern Europe, there are still 680 million pounds of grain left. In order to preserve the grain, Marin built an outer city in the north of Auric, connected to Auric. This outer city is not inhabited by people, only grain. Because cement began to be mass-produced, Marin used cement to build the city walls and repair new granaries. The granaries are made of cement and bricks, and the city walls are reinforced concrete. There is no one else to build an outer city specifically for storing grain except Marin. 680 million pounds of grain, that's 300,000 tons of grain. Marin is extremely troubled about how to consume this grain. Although, he really wants to use grain to attract immigrants. However, he didn't dare to tell others that he had 680 million pounds of grain in stock. If he said that, there would definitely be nobles who would team up to rob. There are people who hate the rich in every era. Whether it is the poor or the nobles. 680 million pounds of grain, if sold at the price of 1 pfennig per pound, is worth tens of millions of gold coins. Such a huge fortune would make even the great nobles red-eyed and crazy. So, Marin could only keep it secret and not talk nonsense. Fortunately, the exchanges between the East Frisian state and foreign countries mainly took place in the port of Emden. There are very few people from other countries in Auric. Because even merchants, Auric are all merchants of the Chamber of Commerce established by Marin. Moreover, Marin has strong capital, and foreign merchants cannot interfere in Auric's business activities at all. Moreover, when Marin built the outer city for storing grain and transported grain, it was strictly covered. The grain transport vehicles all had additional wooden carriages, and outsiders could not see that they were transporting grain. Many people thought it was building materials. Not only that, there was no civilian in the northern outer city, which was specially used to store grain. They were all militia guards formed by Marin's own serfs. They were more reliable and did not use hired mercenaries. However, Marin really didn't know how to deal with the food. Even if the population of East Frisia reached 300,000, everyone could eat as much as they wanted, and they could only eat 200 million pounds a year. And Marin didn't dare to sell food in large quantities in his homeland to prevent being targeted by interested people. Therefore, how to consume food became a concern for Marin. So, in order to relax, Marin took a few guards to play in his own manor. Arriving at a manor not far west of Auric, Marin rode his warhorse Karl and walked into the manor leisurely. Suddenly, 2 wild boars chasing each other jumped out from the bushes on the side of the road, scaring Karl. No. Those are not wild boars, they look like domestic pigs. Whose pigs are not locked up, and they all ran out and ran around. Marin was a little angry. Suddenly, 2 pigs jumped out from the side of the road, that is, in the manor. If they were in the wild, wouldn't they be scared to death? You know, wild boars in the wild are very ferocious. Fortunately, Marin's Mount Karl and the mounts of his guards are war horses, not easily frightened. If it were a nag, it might be scared and run away. Marin's guards were not happy, and quickly called the head of the manor to give him a lecture. The village chief in charge of managing the manor, a special position created by Marin, the village chief is actually a serf, but he is the head of the serfs, replied tremblingly, Mr. Earl, we raise pigs here in the wild, and it has been like this for thousands of years. Marin was stunned, and he suddenly remembered that pigs in medieval Europe were indeed raised in the wild, unlike in the East, where they were raised in pens. Why is this so? It's not because of the food problem. Orientals raise pigs in pens, and pigs just need to stay in the pigsty, waiting for the owner to feed them pig grass, bran, wheat bran and other food byproducts. In ancient China, grain production was always high, with an average yield of 200 to 300 kilograms per mu, and there were enough things like bran and wheat bran. Therefore, they had enough grain byproducts to feed pigs. However, Europe was different. Due to the long-term low grain production, there was no condition to feed pigs with wheat bran. Because the wheat bran was eaten by people themselves. In black baguettes, there was a lot of dirt, not to mention bran. Therefore, Europeans could not afford to feed pigs with wheat bran. Therefore, they chose to let the domestic pigs roam freely, running around in front of and behind the house, looking for grass to eat like sheep. Of course, in order to prevent these pigs from harming crops, many pigs were driven into the forest, away from cultivated land. But in this way, many pigs got lost in the forest and became wild boars. Of course, they were wild boars without fangs, with a temperament between wild boars and domestic pigs. For example, the famous Spanish ham is made from pigs that are raised in oak forests. In addition to eating grass, these pigs also eat acorns that fall to the ground in the oak forest. Then, the Spanish black pigs that eat acorns for a long time will have a special taste. Another name for Spanish ham is acorn Iberian ham. However, Marin knows that letting pigs run wild in the wild all day will not make them fat. After all, how can pigs that exercise all day get fat? If they can't get fat, there will be no oil and water. And the ancients liked to eat fat meat very much. Because the ancients were not like modern people, who had salad oil or sesame oil to eat every day. They usually lacked oil and water, and when they ate meat, they would grab fat meat to eat to replenish the oil and water in their bodies. Moreover, in this era of pig farming in Europe, meat pigs were not castrated. Not only does the pork of uncastrated pigs have a peculiar smell, but they are also restless. Because boars have male hormones and sows have estrogen, which will make pigs restless. Then, spreading wild artillery in the wild became their way of consuming their remaining energy. However, this will cause them to lose weight. In ancient China, domestic pigs were all castrated by veterinarians, whether they were boars or sows, as long as they were raised as meat pigs, they would be castrated when they were a little older. After castration, pigs have no desires or demands, and without hormones, how can they move? In addition to the barrier of the pigsty, they will eat and sleep in the narrow pigsty. Then, their bodies grow very fast, and they are all fat. Moreover, the peculiar smell of pork is gone. After Marin became rich, he has been eating more beef and mutton. Moreover, even if he eats pork, he mostly chooses pork from young pigs. Pigs have not yet secreted hormones before they develop, so pork naturally has no peculiar smell, so he forgot about the need to castrate pigs for a while. Until now, he suddenly remembered. Moreover, even if Marin remembered it before, it was useless. Because there is not enough food to feed pigs. Pigs need food to grow well. There are many pig farms near big cities in later generations. The owners of pig farms drive their cars to the restaurants in the city every day to collect the swill that the restaurants have dumped, and then take it back to feed the pigs. Although it smells bad, the swill is actually real food. Therefore, pigs still grow fat when they eat it. Now, Marin is worried that there is too much food and nowhere to consume it. Then, he met a pig. No, he met. Who cares, anyway, he thought of raising pigs. Marin was also a rural child in his previous life. He knew that before professional feed came out, pigs usually ate grass bran to maintain their lives. When they needed to gain weight, they were fed with nutritious bran and wheat bran. Of course, in spring and summer, fresh and juicy pig grass needs to be cut to feed pigs. Anyway, there is a lot of food now, and these manners are all his own. So Marin decided to start promoting the raising of domestic pigs. After building the pig pen, Marin will find a veterinarian to castrate all the pigs raised for meat. As for where to find a veterinarian, is there anyone better than Morigen and Bader? Mongolian doctors are universal, not only can they treat people, but also animals. Of course, Morigen and Bader are both court doctors, and it is too low of status to always ask them to castrate pigs. So, Marin decided to let Morigen and Bader select the useless ones from their disciples to be veterinarians, who are responsible for castrating pigs. The two teachers demonstrated first, and then guided those useless disciples. In the future, this matter will be done by their useless disciples. Of course, when castrating, Marin will use alcohol to clean the wound to prevent the pigs from infection and death. As for the usual feed for pigs, it is naturally the chaff crushed by ryegrass. Then, Marin will let the mill in his own manner separate the bran of rye when grinding flour as a concentrated feed for pigs. The black bread and bran eaten by the serfs are no longer used who told Marin to have a lot of food. You can be willful if you have money or food. In addition, Marin also plans to plant more alfalfa. Usually, when alfalfa is harvested, some alfalfa can be cut to feed pigs. At least, these alfalfa are more nutritious than those wild grasses. Feeding pigs must be very effective. So, this matter was settled. Many manners began to build special pig pens for raising pigs. Then, Malin invited Morigen and Bader to castrate the pigs. When the two Mongolian doctors heard that Malin asked them to castrate the pigs, their faces became even darker. Fortunately, Malin explained that in the future, such matters would be handed over to their disciples who were not good at medical skills. Otherwise, the two Mongolian doctors with excellent medical skills would almost turn their faces on the spot. Although Mongolian doctors are also good at veterinary medicine, treating people, especially treating nobles, is more noble after all. Treating livestock is always inferior to doctors who treat people. As court doctors, it was a bit humiliating for them to castrate pigs. But Marin had no choice, because at that time in Europe, doctors who treated people were not reliable, let alone veterinarians who treated pigs. So, he could only ask the two masters to do it. Of course, they didn't ask them to do it often, but just to demonstrate it in the early stage. In the future, it will be the group of disciples who are the least competitive under their names who will do this. Both of them have hundreds of disciples, but not everyone has learned medical skills very well. Some people are very talented, learn well and quickly, and will definitely become good doctors in the future. There are also those who learn very poorly, and they may be eliminated in the future and cannot treat patients. Marin thought it was a pity to eliminate such stuff, so he arranged for the serfs who helped raise pigs to castrate the pigs. So much so that later Marin divided Morigen and Bartel's more than 200 disciples into 3 levels. The first level, for those who learned the best medical skills, they would treat people in the future. The second level, for those who learned the average, they would treat cattle and horses in the future and become veterinarians. The third level, for those who learned the worst, they were not even veterinarians, but only half veterinarians, who were responsible for castrating pigs and of course, treating pigs. If they really couldn't handle it, they would go to the veterinarians of the second level to help. In this way, Marin built more than 3,000 independent single-room pig pens in his own manor in East Frisia. Too many pigs in the pen would fight and consume physical strength, and there was only one pig in the pen, so he could only sleep more if he had nothing to do, and raised more than 3,000 pigs. Morigen and Bartel also selected the 30 most unpromising disciples, who would act as low-level veterinarians who castrated and treated pigs in the future. Chapter 24 of the text volume, Rye, Dark Beer. To be honest, Marin despised the European domestic pigs of this era. They were small in size and produced few piglets. The European domestic pigs of this era only produced a few piglets in 1 litter. They were nothing like the Taihu pigs that Marin raised in his previous life. They were so powerful that they could produce more than a dozen piglets in 1 litter, and the highest number could produce more than 20 piglets in 1 litter. Pigs don't have family planning, the more piglets they produce, the better. In this way, the scale of breeding can expand quickly. Moreover, Taihu pigs are larger and grow faster than the current European domestic pigs. It can be said that they are a complete blast in all aspects. Later, Europeans specially introduced and hybridized them to improve the quality of native European pigs. However, Taihu pigs appeared during the Wanli period of the late Ming dynasty. Now, Wanli's grandfather Jiajing has not yet ascended the throne. However, there should be excellent breeds of domestic pigs in Jiangsu and Zhejiang. If they can be introduced, it will also greatly promote the pig farming industry. In fact, Marin not only wants to introduce Taihu pigs, but also wheat varieties from the Ming dynasty. Because the native European varieties of wheat are 2 pitfalls at the moment. Not to mention the low yield, the growth cycle is super long. Generally, after wheat is planted in November, it can only be harvested in October of the next year. Nimad, the growth cycle is almost a year. What a crappy variety. You know, in the past life, Marin's hometown, it was rice and wheat. Wheat was planted in November in autumn and harvested in late May of the following year. Then, rice was planted in June and harvested in October. It happened that you sang and I came on stage. In other words, the growth cycle of Chinese wheat is a few months shorter than the current crappy varieties of wheat in Europe. Not to mention wheat, rye is also sown in spring and harvested in October. This also leads to the fact that only 1 round of crops can be planted on arable land every year, which is very inefficient. But Marin has no choice, it's just such a variety. He used potash fertilizer and phosphate fertilizer, but it only allowed rye to be harvested about 20 days earlier. If you want early maturity, you must change the variety. So, Marin plans to find an opportunity to go to Daming to introduce Taihu pig varieties and introduce Chinese wheat varieties with a short growth cycle and higher yield. In this way, agriculture and animal husbandry will be further promoted. Because he thought of a good way to consume part of the grain by raising pigs, Marin was in a good mood. So, he planned to have a drink. In fact, Marin hadn't drunk for a long time. At home, probably influenced by Italy and the Vatican, Angela and Felice were used to drinking red wine. According to religious interpretation, drinking red wine is equivalent to drinking holy blood. However, Marin was not used to drinking red wine. Therefore, he would rather drink boiled water than red wine. In fact, Marin prefers tea and milk tea. Unfortunately, there is no now. Moreover, before, in order to save food, Marin advocated drinking boiled water instead of beer in East Frisia. However, he was happy today, so he planned to go to the pub for a beer. In fact, in Marin's home, in addition to Marin, old Hoffman and Adler also liked to drink beer. It's just that after Marin got married, he generally didn't eat with his parents and brothers. Only during festivals will they sit together for dinner, but they also drink some red wine with his wife Angela. It's not that Marin doesn't like beer. In fact, Marin likes beer very much. However, in this era, there is no regulation that hops must be added to beer production. This regulation was mandatory by the Duke of Bavaria in 1516, so the taste is not good. Without hops, the unique aroma of beer will be lost. Moreover, beer will be more likely to go sour, and the combination will have a sour taste, a bit like the smell of swill. Therefore, Marin is not used to the beer of this era. It's not that there are no hops, but it seems that hops generally grow in southern Germany. There are no hops in the northern region. If you want, you have to go to the south to buy. Where are ordinary people willing to spend money to buy hops in the south? Even if the amount of hops is not much. Therefore, the beer that ordinary people drink is basically swill beer without hops. Marin would rather drink boiled water than drink this kind of beer. Therefore, for a long time, Marin had forgotten the taste of beer. When he walked into a tavern in Aurich and saw the Count coming over, the bartender immediately came up enthusiastically and recommended various high-end wines. Low-end wines were not in line with Marin's identity. "Count, look, this is a high-end dark beer from Dortmund, the kind with hops." Dortmund, dark beer. Marin seemed to be inspired by something, but he couldn't remember it for a while. So, the Dortmund dark beer handed over by the bartender tasted it slowly. Probably because of the addition of hops, the taste of Dortmund dark beer is very good, relatively mellow, slightly sweet, and the bitterness of hops is not obvious. According to the bartender, this is the specialty of Boll, the brewing master of Dortmund. In fact, the free city of Dortmund, as a Hanseatic city, has a history of brewing beer for more than 200 years. However, it is said that Munich in the south has stronger brewing technology. After drinking the wine, Marin felt that it was not enough, so he took a barrel back to the palace. It happened that they met old Hoffman, and the father and son drank a few glasses together. "Ah, it's really authentic Dortmund dark beer, it's so refreshing to drink it." Obviously, old Hoffman is a lover of dark beer. Moreover, the Hoffman family's hometown is near Bochum, not far from Dortmund. Old Hoffman used to drink Dortmund dark beer, but he had fewer opportunities. Generally speaking, old Hoffman still drinks low-grade, hopless, inferior beer. After all, his family was not well off before. Is it so delicious? Marin was a little confused. He just felt that it was just more delicious than those sour and inferior beers without hops. In fact, although Marin had drunk a lot of beer in his previous life, it was more just to get together with friends, drink beer together, and eat barbecue. That feeling is very good. So, Marin just likes the feeling of drinking beer and eating barbecue, not how much he likes drinking beer. But old Hoffman is different. He is an authentic German guy, and his love for beer is difficult for people from other countries to understand. After drinking the authentic master-brewed dark beer, old Hoffman was even a little excited. "Let me tell you, Marin, these good beers are brewed by those brewing masters who carefully select dark malt, hops, and clear spring water from the mountains. They take a lot of effort." "What did you say just now?" Marin suddenly stood up, stared at old Hoffman with sharp eyes, and seemed a little excited. "What are you doing? Are you showing a bad face to your father? Even though you are a count, I will beat you up anyway." Old Hoffman was dissatisfied with Marin's attitude and thought that Marin was angry with him. "No, Dad, I asked you what you said just now. It's very important to me," Marin said seriously. "Oh, let me think, it seems to be the master selected rye malt." "Yes. That's it. Rye malt." Marin jumped up excitedly. "What's wrong with rye malt?" Old Hoffman was a little confused. "Dad, we have too much grain now, and there is rye everywhere. In order to store all the rye, I built a new city. Think about it, rye, can't it grow into malt? Add hops and spring water, can't it brew delicious dark beer?" Marin just thought of a brilliant idea as if he had an epiphany: take out some grain and brew dark beer vigorously. He had too much rye, and 1 ton of rye could produce 10 tons of beer. With so much rye, who knows how much dark beer could be brewed? "But we don't have hops, and we don't have a brewing master," old Hoffman said doubtfully. "It doesn't mean that you can brew good dark beer just by having rye. There must also be hops and a master who knows how to brew dark beer. What are you afraid of? The thing your son lacks the least is money. Hops, right? I'll send people to the south to buy a large batch. Brewing master, right? Throw money at him. Throw a handful of gold coins at his face, I don't believe he won't come. Marin said domineeringly in a very nouveau riche tone. Then, Marin really sent his men to southern Germany. His men were divided into 3 groups, one to buy hops, one to Dortmund, with a handful of gold coins, to smash the top beer brewing masters. The other group also went to smash the top beer brewing masters with gold coins, but they went to Munich. At the same time, after these 3 groups set off, Marin also sent people to various places to buy new oak barrels for beer brewing. You know, the taste of beer brewed in oak barrels will be much better. As long as there is good beer, I don't believe it can't be sold. You know, Marin suddenly remembered that most Germans are beer lovers. As long as there is good wine, there will be a market. This way, it can be regarded as helping Marin deal with a lot of accumulated rye. Moreover, it is not as eye-catching as directly selling large quantities of grain. Chapter 25 The Golden Horde is almost finished, let's go grab a doctor. It takes time to brew rye into dark beer. Apart from other things, the brewing master must be invited first, and the hops must be in place. Then, the rye must be soaked first and then developed into dark malt. Then, it can be used to brew dark beer. Obviously, this is a long process. If you want to drink your own high-quality dark beer, you will probably have to wait for a long time. So Marin temporarily put this matter aside. Intelligence from Sweden kept coming. The Danish army had already invaded the heartland of Sweden, but old Sten Sture and his followers defended several strong fortresses and stored enough food. With the arrival of winter, the Danes will definitely be in trouble. As the defenders, the Swedes are fine. They live in the city and are not afraid of blizzards. As the attacking party, Denmark will have a hard time in the wild if it fails to capture the city. Moreover, the 1,000 matchlock guns provided by Marin made great contributions in the defense of Stockholm. It is a very sour thing to shoot the enemy troops under the city from the top of the city. Unfortunately, the Danish soldiers tasted the taste of being killed. The young officer Erik Johansen Vasa, Gustav I's father, was a man with a lot of ideas. He ordered the 1,000 musketeers to shoot the Danish elites wearing plate armor. The others dealt with ordinary soldiers who did not wear armor. Because those wearing plate armor were either officers or elite soldiers. Such people often had high martial arts or noble status. If a person with high martial arts jumped on the top of the city, it would be easy for him to gain a foothold. Because a plate armor knight with high martial arts could beat several ordinary soldiers. If they climbed to the top of the city, it would be easy to cover their comrades to climb up. Once there were too many enemies, it would be difficult to drive them down the city. Therefore, Erik Johansen Vasa ordered the musketeers to specifically fight the Danish elites who dared to charge. The other Danish soldiers who did not wear armor were ordinary soldiers, not much better than the Swedish defenders. Even if someone occasionally rushed to the top of the city wall, he would be kicked off the top of the city wall quickly, or simply killed on the top of the city wall. For soldiers of the same level, the advantage of numbers is very important. Only those knights wearing plate armor can ignore the advantage of numbers. Erik Johansen Vasali's behavior of using 1,000 musketeers to attack the brave pioneers of Denmark can be said to be right. Therefore, the Danish siege was loud but difficult to really conquer. Marin suddenly thought that in history, this old Sten Sture died in 1503. His successor Erik Troll was not capable enough to withstand the attack of the Danes. Therefore, old Sten Sture, who has great prestige and ability, had better live longer. Before, Marin had planned to ask a Mongolian doctor to be old Sten Sture's personal doctor to protect her health. However, Marin forgot about it later. Now, thinking about it, Marin decided to send someone to the Golden Horde immediately to ask the court doctor there. Although Morigen and Bader are no less than other court doctors of the Golden Horde. However, these two are used by Marin, so how could he be willing to give them to others? Therefore, it is the best choice to ask the Golden Horde. After all, the Golden Horde is now in decline, facing the double attack of the Crimean Khanate and the Grand Duchy of Moscow, and the situation is precarious. Now, everyone in the Golden Horde is in danger. Many people who have the conditions to leave have left. The reason why Marin was able to successfully recruit Morigen and Bader last time was because the situation in the Golden Horde was already very bad, and there was no future to stay there. In fact, before Munkagir Khan was bribed by the Lithuanians to attack Moscow in 1512, the Crimean Khanate had always been an ally of the Grand Duchy of Moscow. Because they have a common enemy, the main branch of the Golden Horde, the Great Horde. The reason why Crimea wants to destroy the Great Horde is because the Great Horde is the main branch of the Golden Horde. As long as the main branch is not destroyed, the Crimean Khanate will always be a small Khan, not a big Khan. The powerful Crimean Khanate is obviously unwilling to be inferior to others, especially since the Great Horde has not fallen. Only by destroying the Great Horde can the Crimean Khanate regard itself as the successor of the Golden Horde. Therefore, during this period of time, even if Marin paid to buy off the Crimean Khanate, it would not work. Because only after the Great Horde, the main branch of the Golden Horde, was destroyed, could the Crimean Khan call himself the Great Khan. Now, he is just a small Khan of the princes. Therefore, it is impossible to buy him off at this time. Later, when the common enemy of the Crimean Khanate and the Grand Duchy of Moscow, the Great Horde, disappeared, the Crimean Khanate and the Grand Duchy of Moscow lost the basis for their alliance. At that time, the Grand Duke of Lithuania had an idea and spent only 15,000 gold coins to buy off Munkagir Khan and let him sneak attack the Grand Duchy of Moscow from the rear. Therefore, during this period of time, even if Marin wanted to save the main branch of the Golden Horde, the Great Horde, he had no way to do it. You know, the coalition forces of the Grand Duchy of Moscow and the Crimean Khanate are very powerful. Even if Marin sent 10,000 troops, it might not be helpful. In 1480, when the Grand Duchy of Moscow fought against the Golden Horde army of Khan Akhmad, Ivan III brought 200,000 troops. Although these 200,000 troops were very weak and not very effective, the number was quite scary. The most important thing is that the tens of thousands of Tatar cavalry of the Crimean Khanate were very fierce. Therefore, the Great Horde was hopeless. Now, what Marin had to do was to send people to Sarai, the capital of the Golden Horde, to recruit as many Mongolian doctors as possible as court doctors. Send one to Old Sten Stur, and it would be good to keep the extra ones in the country. You know, the situation of the Great Horde is very dangerous now, and it has been annexed by the neighboring Nogai Khanate. It is the best time to pick up the bargains now. Anyway, the Great Horde will be destroyed next year. The Great Horde must be in chaos at this time, just like the Soviet Union before its disintegration, it was a mess. In order to win over as many doctors as possible from the Great Horde, Marin allocated a lot of gold coins. Again, the same words, use gold coins to hit. These Mongolian doctors who can be court doctors in Sarai, the capital of the Golden Horde, must have good medical skills, at least much better than the European bloodletting doctors. Moreover, they are also better than the students of Morigen and Bader. Any court doctor of the Golden Horde can crush the murderous quacks in Western Europe who only know how to bleed and open a piece of crow. European doctors have long regarded a piece of crow as a panacea. And Eastern medicine, whether it is Central Plains medicine or Mongolian medicine, attaches great importance to experience. The longer you practice medicine, the richer your experience. If you have a short time in medicine, even if you have good talent, it is difficult to reach a higher level. Because the Eastern system of medicine attaches great importance to personal experience. After all, Eastern medicine does not have a modern medical system, nor does it have widely circulated medical books and cases. Therefore, medical knowledge can only be accumulated through experience. Therefore, most old doctors are always better than young doctors. This is also the reason why young Chinese medicine practitioners are useless in later generations, because Chinese medicine relies on accumulation. Chinese medicine graduates who have just graduated from school, unless they are from a Chinese medicine family, must have insufficient experience. And it takes many years of accumulation to become a good Chinese medicine practitioner. Unlike Western medicine, as long as you follow the standards, you can get started quickly. Therefore, the equally young Western medicine practitioners have to surpass Chinese medicine practitioners, which gives people the illusion that Chinese medicine is useless. When you get older and have more experience, Chinese medicine practitioners may not be worse than Western medicine practitioners. Of course, this refers to some difficult and complicated diseases that are difficult to diagnose. Diseases that require surgery still have to be solved by Western medicine. According to Morigen, as the capital of the Golden Horde that dominated Eastern Europe, Sarai city had dozens of court doctors, all of whom were experienced Mongolian doctors. Moreover, these dozens of court Mongolian doctors were different from Morigen and Bader who had fled here. As local court doctors, they generally had their own disciples, and they had trained them for many years. After all, as court doctors, they were at least middle-aged, and many of them were not young. Their disciples were not as young as Morigen and Bader's disciples. Many of them were already middle-aged, had studied for many years, and were not bad. Therefore, Morigen and Bader suggested that not only should those court doctors be poached, but their outstanding disciples should also not be let go. In this regard, Marin readily accepted. Then, with a wave of his hand, bring a few more bags of gold coins and smash them hard. Chapter 26 Borrowing a Gun. The war in West Frisia has been going on for several months, affecting local farming and autumn harvest. Fortunately, neither side of the war relies on local agricultural production, otherwise the army will be hungry and scattered. After the autumn harvest began, both sides suspended military operations. At present, the West Frisian resistance, led by Sivag, has occupied Leeuwarden, the largest city in the west of West Frisia, and is resisting the attack of the Saxon army based on the solid city walls. As for the area east of Leeuwarden, it is under the control of Duke George. However, due to the lack of food, the two sides are temporarily truce. Duke George left the army stationed in the east of Leeuwarden, and he took some people back to the Duchy of Saxony to supervise the autumn harvest and collect military rations. After all, with tens of thousands of troops and many cavalry, the consumption of food is very large. The Frisian resistance also sent people to the Duchy of Guedes for help. As a country in the plain area of the lower reaches of the Rhine, the Duchy of Guedes is naturally rich in food. Therefore, the armies of both sides will not be short of food. However, it was hard for the local people in Frisia. The war had brought a devastating blow to local agricultural production. West Frisia, with a population of 200,000, had already lost 20,000 people. Moreover, because of this year's war, 40,000 refugees were generated. If they could not get food, most of these 40,000 refugees would starve to death. Marin regarded these Frisian people as his own people, and naturally could not sit back and watch them starve to death. So Marin ordered the scouts under Saul's men to quietly enter Frisia, blend in with the local disaster victims, and spread the news that the East Frisian state had food. If they fled there and were willing to accept employment in the manor, become serfs, they would get enough food. So the refugees were boiling. Under the guidance of Saul's scouts, the refugees avoided the battlefield area and rushed eastward from the southern border. Duke George's men also discovered this, but they had to monitor the Frisian resistance in Leeuwarden and could not spare anyone to stop them. Besides, why stop it? The army itself was short of food, so how could it give food to the refugees? So, in the end, they turned a blind eye. During the truce, the Frisian resistance army was not idle either. At present, the area controlled by the Frisian resistance army is not large, only the area west of Leeuwarden. However, the section from Leeuwarden to the western fishing port of Harlingen is the most important supply route for the Frisian resistance army. Now that the Saxon army is on standby and has stopped attacking, this supply line is very smooth. So, Sivag, the commander of the Frisian resistance army, quietly left Leeuwarden through this supply line and boarded the ship to Emden in Harlingen. On the third day, Sivag arrived at Auric, the capital of Marin, and met Marin. Sivag, why are you not commanding the army on the front line, running to me? Are you going to give up that place and come to me? Marin joked. Sivag stayed in Marin for a long time, and he had some friendship with Marin. My lord Count, I'm here to ask for your help. Sivag said with a wry smile. Ask for help? What do you want? Let me make it clear first, I can't borrow soldiers, this is too sensitive. Marin said seriously. Not borrowing soldiers, I want to borrow guns. What? Marin was surprised. Why do you have to borrow guns? Are you trying to violate the gun control regulations? However, Marin quickly realized that he was not in China in his previous life. Yes, borrow guns. Lord Earl, before, our army fought a big battle with the Saxon army outside the city of Leeuwarden. In the end, we lost. This is not normal. Marin curled his lips. Saxony still has a strong foundation. Speaking of it, in the Battle of Leer County, although he defeated the Saxon army, he did not kill many people, most of them were prisoners. After all, he did not have the courage of Bai Chi to kill 400,000 people. After these prisoners were redeemed by the Duchy of Saxony, they were fighting again. Therefore, except for some knights who were hammered to death on the spot, most of the Saxon regular army were still there. Therefore, the combat effectiveness of the Saxon army did not decline much, but the indemnity ruined its finances. The strength of our infantry is actually not bad. After all, I have learned some methods of training infantry from you. However, we can't stop the impact of the Saxon knights. If it weren't for the digging method I learned from you, maybe our army would have been overwhelmed by the Saxon knights. Sivag said with lingering fear. Marin's defense method of 2 pits plus inclined wooden stakes can resist the charge of the knights. In that battle, Sivag commanded his Frisian resistance army to dig 2 pits and insert inclined wooden stakes. However, the command of the 5,000 troops sent by the Principality of Guedes was not in his hands. The people of Guedes did not learn Sivag to dig pits, so their troops were overwhelmed by the Saxon knights and almost destroyed. Fortunately, Sivag and his men fought desperately to save them and finally protected the troops of Guedes. But during the attack, Guedes lost 800 of his 5,000 men. Fortunately, they were not far from Leeuwarden. Then, Sivag led his army and quickly fled back to Leeuwarden, and began to defend the city. However, defense was not easy either, as the Saxon knights were too brave. They climbed the city walls fiercely. Rushing to the top of the city would also cause great casualties to the defenders. It happened that during this period, Sivag heard from a Danish merchant who had stopped in Harlingen that the Swedes had used 1,000 muskets to cause huge casualties to the Danish army besieging Stockholm. So, he was moved. Sivag knew that muskets were generally equipped in Marin's army. There were at least more than 2,000 musketeers in the 10,000-man army. So, he also wanted to borrow a gun to attack the Saxon knights in plate armor. Therefore, Sivag personally rushed to East Frisia, hoping to borrow 1,000 matchlock guns from Marin based on their friendship, or even a few hundred. Marin thought about it for a long time, weighing the pros and cons in his mind. However, he finally refused the request to lend the active musket to the Frisian resistance. Because this is too characteristic of East Frisia. At that time, the Duchy of Saxony will be able to tell at a glance that this is Marin's gun. After all, the Saxon army had suffered a great loss under the musket before. At that time, if George, the Duke of Saxony, makes a fuss in the imperial parliament, he will be in trouble. Maybe he will be impeached by the Saxons and lose his position as an imperial senator. Therefore, Marin cannot lend the active musketeer's musket to the Frisian resistance. However, a batch of muskets with different calibers can be built for the Frisian resistance, just like the batch of muskets that supported the Swedes. But this batch of muskets cannot appear for no reason. After all, West Frisia is right next to East Frisia, which is too sensitive. So, Marin asked Sivag to send some representatives to the big cities in the south, such as Cologne and Nuremberg, where excellent craftsmen gathered, to openly and wantonly buy matchlocks, and buy gunpowder and lead blocks. Marin will help with this money. For this reason, Marin directly sponsored 30,000 gold coins. In fact, Marin asked Sivag to do this just to clear his suspicion. You see, people bought muskets in Cologne and Nuremberg, which has nothing to do with me. Moreover, Nuremberg in this era is indeed a gathering place for skilled craftsmen. It is said that the world's first practical rifled gun was born in Nuremberg in 1520. Therefore, it is not surprising to buy a batch of matchlock guns in Nuremberg and Cologne, which also have many great craftsmen. Now, there are nearly 1,000 craftsmen in the musket factory under Marin. They are all experienced in making muskets and can produce hundreds of muskets every day. Even if they help the Frisian resistance army design and produce a new caliber matchlock gun, the manufacturing speed will be reduced, and there will be no problem in producing 100 or 200 a day. In the end, Sivag left with satisfaction, and immediately sent people to Nuremberg, Cologne and other places to openly purchase muskets in large quantities to cover up Marin's support. On his side, Marin also ordered the craftsmen in the musket factory to engrave fake craftsman marks from Nuremberg, Cologne and other places on the barrels when making muskets, indicating that they were produced there. Chapter 27, Columbus is back. In November, in the Canary Islands, 4 ships led by Columbus and 10 ships of the Spaniards appeared in the port of Las Palmas in the Canary Islands. The armed merchant ship number 2509 sent by Marin to meet Columbus just waited for Columbus and Draka, who landed for repairs. Draka quickly handed over all the spice seeds he collected to the captain Aben, Bald Aben, who went to greet them, and there were more than a dozen untouchable slaves who knew how to grow spices bought from India. At the same time, Draka also brought back several sacks of rice seeds, a common food for Indians, and asked these Indian untouchable slaves to take them to Granada for planting. The reason for this is that Draka was afraid that these Indian slaves were not used to eating bread, so he asked them to grow some rice and make pulao for themselves. After all, these slaves from Indian untouchables will be the main force in growing spices in the future. Therefore, Draka did not dare to neglect it too much. After all, this is related to Marin's business of making money. If Marin knew that Draka did this, he would definitely give him 100 likes. Moreover, when the rice in Granada matures, they will definitely ask for it. Because Marin hasn't eaten rice for several years. Since he received the spice seeds and Indian slaves, Aben planned to set sail directly to Granada. But Columbus frowned. Aben, you have only learned navigation for a few years. Are you sure you can find America with the fleet? Don't get lost in the Atlantic Ocean. Columbus felt that it seemed too arrogant to let Aben lead a lonely ship. It's okay, Lord Columbus, Lord Count and Lord Leonardo da Vinci invented an instrument called sextant, which can measure latitude. They also invented a method of using a marine clock to measure longitude and taught it to me. Although I don't have the ability to explore, Lord Amerigo has been to Granada once before and recorded the longitude and latitude. What I have to do is to measure the longitude and latitude every day. According to the coordinates given by Lord Amerigo, it is easy to reach Granada. Longitude? Latitude? Columbus frowned. He knew about latitude, after all, he was a navigator. But in this era, the concept of longitude was not yet clear, and he was a little confused. Moreover, this matter was not figured out by Marin until Columbus left. Therefore, Amerigo knew, but Columbus did not. Longitude refers to the distance between the east and west and the port of Emden. I can't explain this clearly, sir, you can go back and ask the Count and Da Vinci. I only learned the calculation method, but I don't understand the reason. Aben scratched his bald head honestly. By the way, Lord Draca, the Count told me before that he wanted to ask Baron Sandro to help with the connection. He wanted to buy a coastal oasis at the southern end of Morocco east of the Canary Islands. It seems to be called Leon. Leon? Draca frowned. Yes, the map is here, please look. Aben handed Draca the geographical location map of Leon hand-drawn by Marin. Did the Earl say anything else? He told me to pay attention to this matter, saying that this place is very important to him. If you come back, I will leave this matter to you. Because, I still have to go to Granada. Okay, leave it to me. I will leave a small boat with less cargo here until the matter is done. Well, I have asked Baron Sandro to communicate privately with the chiefs of Morocco before. But I don't have time to wait now. So, please finish this matter. The Earl said that this is very important. If others ask, just say it is for raising Arabian horses. Then, Aben told Draca some of the points that Marin had told him to pay attention to. After handing over the matter, Aben took all the crew members, and the spice seeds, rice seeds and Indian untouchable slaves that he had just obtained, and embarked on the journey to the west. After getting the job, Draca and Columbus also made arrangements quickly. They vacated a 180-ton ship and put all the cargo on the other 3 ships. Then, leave enough guards and sailors for Draca. Then, Columbus took the other 3 ships and continued to go north with the Spanish fleet. After arriving in the Spanish waters, he stayed in Spain for a short time to receive the commendation and reward from the 2 kings of Spain. Then, he returned home with the fleet. In Cadiz, Columbus and the commander of the Spanish fleet, Alonso de Oveda, were warmly received by the 2 kings of Spain. When they set sail from the Canary Islands, a speedboat went back home first and reported to Toledo. Then, Ferdinand II and Queen Isabella I, with Prince Alexander, came to the port of Cadiz to welcome the return of the fleet. Of course, the more popular one was actually Alonso de Oveda. After all, he was a Spaniard and a subordinate of the 2 kings. And Columbus was just an outsider now. So, the treatment of the 2 was completely different. Alonso de Oveda was conferred a baron, but his fiefdom was in Spain, with fertile land and a large area. Although Columbus was once again canonized as a baron by Spain and rewarded with land, he was actually given the savage continent. Yes, the savage continent that the Spanish kings almost ignored. Moreover, the specific fiefdom has not yet been determined. Ferdinand II told Columbus calmly, aren't you a navigator? Go explore by yourself, find an island, and report it if you think it's good. Well, the Spanish kings are really easy, even the location of the fiefdom must be found by Columbus himself, without any sincerity. This time, the Spanish fleet dispatched 10 ships and transported back 1.2 million pounds of spices. In fact, the Spaniards wanted to buy 2 million pounds of spices. However, there are not so many spices in India for them to buy. They bought out the spice market in Calicut, but only collected 1 million pounds. Moreover, the purchase price of spices was raised from 1.5 pfennigs per pound to 2 pfennigs per pound. Later, Indian spice merchants from outside Calicut brought a lot of spices to Calicut, which allowed them to collect 1.2 million pounds of spices. Draca, on the other hand, was quick to act and bought the quota of 50,000 pounds of spices as soon as he arrived. Otherwise, he would not be able to get it. Of course, even so, the 2 kings of Spain made a fortune. 1.2 million pounds of spices can be sold for 2.4 million gold coins at a price of 10 shillings, 2 gold coins, per pound. The cost is very low, and the entire voyage cost and procurement cost do not exceed 100,000 gold coins. If sold at a price of 10 shillings per pound, the 2 kings can earn 2.3 million gold coins. Of course, that is impossible. Because the quantity is too large, it must be sold at the wholesale price. Even so, it was enough for the 2 kings to earn a huge profit of no less than 1.8 million gold coins. Looking at the ship full of spices, Ferdinand II and Isabella I, who were always calm, were so excited that they did a cheerful ballroom dance on the bow of the spice ship, regardless of their middle age. And when Columbus's fleet returned to Emden, Marin was also very excited. Because Columbus brought back 300 tons of saltpeter and 100 tons of copper to Marin. 300 tons of saltpeter can be used to make 400 tons of gunpowder, which Marin can use for several years. Therefore, Marin has every reason to be excited. And 100 tons of copper can also be used to cast a lot of artillery. Or, it is also profitable to sell it. Before, Marin gave all the stock of gunpowder to Sweden, and he felt very unconfident. If a war breaks out, the guns and cannons of Marin's army will become scrap iron. Now, Columbus returned with saltpeter, which made Marin feel relieved. Of course, Marin is not a stingy person. Columbus brought back things, so he had to reward him. However, this time Columbus was a guide for the Spaniards, and his contribution to Marin was not very great. Therefore, the title cannot be promoted. However, money can be rewarded. So, Marin pointed to a treasure chest carried by his men, and said to Columbus with a gentle face, "Christopher, this is 10,000 gold coins, take it back to subsidize the family." Subsidize the family. Everyone around had a twitch in the corners of their mouths. Damn, whose ordinary family needs 10,000 gold coins? Or it's a subsidy. Then, they looked at Marin eagerly. "Boss, my family is in financial difficulty, please subsidize me a little." Marin naturally would not subsidize casually, after all, Columbus had been sailing for 2 years. Moreover, Marin also planned to let Columbus serve as the principal of the captain's school to help him train more navigators. Chapter 28 Buying Layown. Recently, Marin's luck seems to have been very good. Not long after Columbus returned, Draka also returned from the Canary Islands and brought back good news. Because after Aben arrived in the Canary Islands, he stuffed a bag of gold coins into Baron Sandro, the controller of the Canary Islands, so Baron Sandro was very concerned about this matter. However, Baron Sandro did not contact the Wadas dynasty in Fez. Because the Wadas dynasty has completely lost control of the Moroccan region south of the Atlas Mountains. Now, it is the Saad tribe that controls the area south of the Atlas Mountains in Morocco. And the Layoun region is also one of the vassals of the Saad tribe. Therefore, it is better to talk to the Saad tribe that dominates the south than to talk to the Fez court that has lost control. So, Baron Sandro sent someone to contact Abu Abdullah Khaim, the chief of the Saad tribe, to discuss the purchase of the Layoun region. Abu Abdullah Khaim, the founder of the Saad dynasty, was very confused and didn't know why Marin wanted to buy the small oasis of Layoun. Moreover, the name of Marin shocked Abu Abdullah Khaim. Because the Wadas dynasty in Morocco is a branch of the Marin dynasty. Of course, it was just a shock. After all, Marin is a European and has nothing to do with the Berbers. During the secret negotiations, Draka naturally followed the script designed by Marin and said seriously that he wanted to buy a batch of Arabian horses and graze them here, planning to build this place into a horse breeding base. Abu Abdullah Khaim felt a little funny. He knew the situation in Layoun. There is only a long oasis lake there, and only the edge of the oasis lake has grassland suitable for grazing. More than 10 kilometers away from the oasis lake is a desert area. Strictly speaking, there is a desert between the Layoun oasis and the main control area of the Saad tribe. Therefore, Abu Abdullah Khaim did not think highly of Layoun. In fact, the Layoun tribe was not a branch of the Saad tribe, but a small tribe attached to them. This tribe has a population of more than 4,000 and about 1,000 cavalry. It is not strong, but not weak. Moreover, the tribute they pay to the Saad family every year is not much, only dozens of sheep. When Draka cautiously proposed to buy Layoun with 10,000 gold coins, Abu Abdullah Khaim was immediately tempted. That night, Abu Abdullah Khaim discussed with the religious leader, Sharif, of the Saad tribe, Muhammad ibn Abdul Rahman. Coincidentally, the Saad tribe is now gathering strength and wants to rebel against the Wadas dynasty. So, they finally agreed to Draka's offer. However, they also put forward an additional condition, that is, every year, Marin must privately sell them a large number of iron ingots. Obviously, this iron ingot is used by the Saad tribe to make weapons. In North Africa, ironware is also very precious. Because iron is not produced locally. Even if there is iron, it is controlled by the Wadas dynasty. Arab cavalry is very simple, as long as a warhorse, a white robe, and a scimitar, they can play. For them, the Arab scimitar is a weapon. However, iron is required to make a scimitar. The Saad tribe lives in the barren land south of the mountains in Morocco, and only the Sioux River basin is relatively rich. Therefore, they are also short of iron. If Marin agrees to sell them iron every year, they will agree. So, Draka hurriedly boarded the ship and returned to ask Marin. In addition, Abu Abdullah Kame also told Draka that the Aoun tribe was only their vassal tribe, not their subordinates. Therefore, although the Saad tribe sold Aoun to Marin. However, Marin needs to send his own troops to conquer this tribe. Marin cursed in his heart, but he didn't feel anything. After all, if a small tribe of 4,000 people can't be dealt with, it would be too frustrating. Moreover, this tribe is a tribe in the desert and has nowhere to escape. Because if they leave the oasis lake in Laoun, they will all die of thirst. Moreover, to the north are the Saads who sold them out, and to the south and east are deserts. Even if they escape, it's a dead end. And, it just so happens that Marin thinks the output of his own steel plant is too high and there is nowhere to sell it. Since the people of the Saad tribe want to buy it, then sell it. As for whether the Saads will turn against and take back Laoun after they become strong, Marin said he would ignore it completely. Because after obtaining the Laoun area, he will send people to build a solid small city in Laoun with reinforced concrete, so as not to be afraid of the Moroccans coming to attack. Moreover, because this area is located on the seashore, Marin can send ships for support at any time, and it doesn't matter how long it lasts. It just so happens that Marin also wants to test the combat effectiveness of the lancers who have been trained in the Teutonic Kingdom for several months. Therefore, Marin plans to pull the 1,000 lancers to Laoun to fight against the opponent's 1,000 tribal cavalry. If they win, everyone will be happy. If they can't even beat a third-rate unit like the tribal cavalry, it means that the training of the lancers and the wall charge has failed. As for the problem of death, Marin has never considered it. At most, pay some pensions. Moreover, these wandering knights recruited from the Teutonic Kingdom are actually unlucky people who were driven out of their homes. Even if Marin wants to pay pensions, he doesn't know who to give it to. So, Marin quickly decided to agree to the conditions proposed by the Saad tribe. Then, he began to prepare troops and horses, sent ships to the Teutonic Kingdom, and pulled the soldiers to the Canary Islands. Then, he landed in Laoun and killed the Laoun tribe on the shore of the Laoun Oasis Lake. In order to give the other side a chance to react, Marin even planned to let the lancers launch a wall charge after the enemy cavalry had gathered. He wanted to see if the wall charge was as awesome as what was said on the internet. However, arranging troops to fight in Laoun was a very complicated matter. Because, if you want to station troops in the Canary Islands, you must obtain the consent of the Spanish royal family. For this reason, Marin had to send someone to apply to the two kings of Spain for this matter. In addition, it would take a lot of ships to transport 1,000 lancers and their war horses to the Canary Islands and transport them to land in Laoun. In short, there was still a lot of preparation work involved. When the preparations were completed, Marin decided to lead the troops to conquer this small tribe in person. In order to ensure safety, Marin decided to bring another 1,000 infantrymen with him. In this way, even if the lancers failed, he could retreat unscathed under the protection of the infantry and calmly retreat to the warship and leave. However, this possibility was not great. Because the probability of the lancers' victory was very high. Moreover, he decided to bring 1,000 veterans among the infantrymen with him for protection. As long as the enemy dared to charge, their infantry could defeat the enemy. After all, the enemy was just a tribal cavalry of militia nature, not regular cavalry. Chapter 29 He is a knight. Angela's due date is in early February, but after entering January, Angela suffered from prenatal anxiety. For this reason, Marin had to spend more time with Angela and coax her carefully. Even in order to please Angela, Marin called Da Vinci, who was sticking with Lisa, and asked him to play music for Angela. Da Vinci was very aggrieved. The old man is already a nobleman, not a street singer. But how can Marin care? The wife during pregnancy is the biggest, and he, the count, must also give way to 8 points. So, he doesn't care whether Da Vinci is willing or not. If he doesn't want to come, Marin will let Con carry him over. Da Vinci is a versatile person and a musician. He was seen playing a violin-like instrument and playing soothing music. However, perhaps the music was not cheerful enough, and Angela did not feel happy. Seeing the violin-like instrument used by Leonardo da Vinci, Marin suddenly remembered a famous violin piece: "He's a pirate, he is a pirate." This cheerful and exciting violin piece can arouse people's emotions. In his previous life, Marin would be in high spirits when listening to this piece of music, and all his depression would be thrown away. It just so happened that Marin had memorized this music score in his previous life and bought a violin, intending to show off and pick up girls. Unfortunately, because of his hand disability, he didn't practice well until he crossed over. However, it doesn't matter if Marin didn't practice well. Isn't there a music master, Ada, here? So, in the following time, Marin and Leonardo da Vinci went to modify the instrument. The violin-like thing used by Leonardo da Vinci is still different from the violin. Moreover, the name is different, it is called micro, with only 3 strings, and it is an instrument passed from Egypt. Marin has also played the violin for a long time, knows that the violin has 4 strings, and still remembers the arrangement and style of the strings. So, he drew the style of the violin in his previous life and asked Leonardo da Vinci to make a violin. Leonardo da Vinci is indeed a versatile person, and he even knows how to make a violin. Of course, Marin also transferred an Italian craftsman who is also good at making musical instruments to help. 7 days later, Leonardo da Vinci finally made the violin that Marin wanted. Although it was a bit hasty and the production may not be so sophisticated, the quality is not much different from the low-quality and low-priced violin that Marin bought in his previous life. Then, Marin spent another 3 days tuning the strings with Leonardo da Vinci. Of course, it was Leonardo da Vinci who tuned the strings, and Marin listened to see if it felt the same as in his previous life. Then, a violin in the modern sense finally appeared. Then, Marin took out the 5-line score of He is a Pirate. However, in Europe now, only the 4-line score is popular, and the 5-line score is a bit high-end, and Leonardo da Vinci and others are still a little unpredictable. So, Marin, a half-baked musician, explained the 5-line score to Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci was indeed a great musician. He explained it several times and understood it immediately. Then, Leonardo da Vinci played He is a Pirate on the violin immediately. After 3 times, it was very standard, very much like David Garrett's level. The world-famous music is worthy of being a world-famous music. Such a cheerful and exciting violin music immediately conquered Leonardo da Vinci. Then, Leonardo da Vinci asked, "Mr. Count, what is the name of this song?" "He is a sea." Marin suddenly woke up. Damn, this name is not suitable. In this era, pirates are the symbol of villains. If Marin makes a famous song to portray pirates, isn't it an endorsement for pirates? In that case, it will affect his reputation. So, he immediately changed his words. The name of this song is, He is a Knight. He is a Knight. Leonardo da Vinci thought about it. The exciting tune really has a fighting element in it. However, this tune is a bit fast-paced. Isn't the knight's battle dull and heavy? However, that is not the point. It is reasonable for Marin to say that it is a knight's battle. Who stipulates that a knight's battle must be dull and heavy, like charging on horseback? Knights can also draw their swords and fight in close combat, and the rhythm will be very fast. Then, it is finally time for Marin to show off his skills. After da Vinci practiced this piece, Marin cooperated with it and planned to give Angela a surprise. So, one day, Angela saw this scene in the square in the front yard of the palace. Marin put on a full set of shiny aristocratic plate armor, holding a lance with the flag of the Bullock family hanging, riding a warhorse carl, and slowly walked out from the east side of the square. Suddenly, the passionate sound of the violin rang out, and da Vinci hid in a small room next to it and began to play the violin to dub the handsome Marin. Of course, this guy is not allowed to show his face, and he can't steal the limelight from Marlon. After the passionate "He's a Pirate" sounded, Marlon also kicked Carl and started to speed up. Then, Marlon skillfully performed horse riding and lance thrusts, which attracted cheers. Angela's eyes also lit up. I haven't seen such a handsome husband for a long time. The most important thing is, this dubbing is also very handsome. Who is playing? Why can't I see anyone? Marlon certainly won't let da Vinci come out and steal the limelight from him, so he performed even harder, sprinted back and forth several times, and posed dozens of cool poses. Angela was immediately excited, and the low mood caused by prenatal anxiety was immediately swept away. Wow! Husband, you are so handsome. Husband, you are the best. I want to give birth to a baby for you. Angela's eyes were full of little stars. And da Vinci played "He's a Pirate" over and over again, while complaining in his heart, handsome hair. Without the master's heavenly voice, how could he be so handsome? It's not like I haven't seen knights before. However, I have to admit that Marin looks good. Because he looks more like the beautiful Lady Mary, Marin still has a pretty face. Coupled with the heroic and handsome aristocratic style silver white plate armor, it has the style of Zhao Zilong with a white horse and silver spear. And "He's a Pirate" is just right for his temperament. If Adler, a sturdy man, comes, it will have nothing to do with being cool. The most suitable voice for a tough guy like Adler is probably the extremely aggressive Soviet March. Marin's handsome performance and Leonardo da Vinci's wonderful performance attracted officials working in the front yard of the palace. So, regardless of working hours, they also came out to watch the fun. Prime Minister Geoffrey saw that his boss was playing cool. How could this be? He must show his support. So, Geoffrey clapped his hands vigorously and cheered loudly. When others saw that the Prime Minister had cheered, how could they not cheer? Moreover, the Earl did perform very well and looked very handsome. Of course, this was the opinion of the civil officials. The military officers thought that Marin's actions were a bit flashy and more about being cool than being practical. However, it was really good to attract girls. Of course it was good. Marin had watched so much TV in his previous life that he naturally knew how to be cool and handsome. Although he was not very professional, he could kill others in seconds in the early 16th century. The gorgeous actions, coupled with the world-class exciting music, made Marin's cool behavior this time a great success. However, poor warhorse Karl, he was sweating all over, and he had to go back to eat a big meal of oatmeal and beat a few eggs to make up for it. Afterwards, everyone asked what the song was called, and Marin naturally told them proudly, he is a knight. This song is suitable for his knight's performance. Of course, what Marin cares about most is his wife Angela. The melancholy expression is gone, and now Marin's eyes are full of stars. Dear, you are so handsome. I want to give birth to you. Well, give birth to a little knight, who will be as handsome as his father in the future. Marin hugged Angela and encouraged. Angela nodded fiercely, and began to look forward to giving birth to a little knight as handsome as Marin today, riding a warhorse and charming all the princesses in Europe. What? You said Marin was going to charm those princesses? Absolutely not. If he dared, I would click him with scissors. However, if it was his own son, it would be nothing to charm all the princesses in Europe, and it would be no problem to charm princesses all over the world. This is the double standard of women. They don't allow their husbands to hook up with other beauties, but they are very tolerant of their sons. Chapter 30, A Song to Fame. There are many good songs. In fact, Marin knows many famous songs. But that's useless. Because many famous songs are symphonies, which Marin can't make. Those symphonies require many instruments to play together. The most important thing is that many instruments have not been invented yet. It's okay for you to let Marin understand the structure of guitar, violin, eru, flute and shao. If you want Marin to know how the complex piano is made, sorry, he is not a god, so he can't. Therefore, even if Marin knows those famous songs, he can't play them. Therefore, the simplest, Pirates of the Caribbean, soundtrack, He is a Pirate, that can be played with a violin became Marin's first choice. Because this song is simple and can be played with a simple single instrument. But Marin can't make the more majestic, the Mass. Because he doesn't have a symphony orchestra to play. Many instruments are not yet available. Even the Conquest of Paradise, played when Columbus was sent off, Marin was due to the lack of instruments at the time, and when he played it, he did not reach the very shocking level of later generations. The effect was at least reduced by half. Of course, even if the effect was reduced by half, it was still amazing. After all, this was the early 16th century, and the level of music was still very low. Before, Marin's performance in the forecourt of the palace shocked all the onlookers. Especially those young knights, because they felt that Marin's performance and the background music were so cool. If they could learn it and use it to pick up girls, they would definitely fascinate thousands of beautiful girls. Although they thought Marin's moves were too fancy, they had to admit that it was very handsome and attractive. You know, these knights who worked for Marin were basically still single, and they would definitely benefit a lot from learning the skills to pick up girls. So, they began to pester Marin and wanted to know the origin of the song. As for Marin's cool moves, they could easily remember them, because it was not difficult, as long as they could pretend. However, they didn't understand such advanced things as songs and instruments. So, they need to ask Marin. Well, this is composed by the Earl himself, the name is, He's a Knight, it describes the Earl's mental journey when he just became a knight. Marin began to brag about his time as a knight. When he was still a knight, Marin was indeed very happy, especially when he took Conn and Kohler hunting in the Black Forest. At that time, Marin did not have too many worries. He was very happy hunting in the forest with Conn and Kohler. That situation is quite consistent with the cheerful and exciting, He's a Pirate. These young knights were fascinated by it. They were also wandering knights. They were poor before they found an employer. But Marin was able to accumulate hundreds of marks of wealth and still live so happily. The difference in IQ is really incomparable. When it came to the exciting part, Marin sold out Da Vinci, saying that Da Vinci was the accompaniment. So, a group of young knight officers ran to Da Vinci and asked Da Vinci to accompany them to pick up girls. Da Vinci's nose was crooked with anger. Damn it, I am a knight after all, and a hereditary knight, not lower than you. Damn it, you actually let me accompany you to pick up girls? You don't take me seriously. So, Ada righteously refused the request to be the accompaniment. So, this group of young knights who were eager for girls came to Marin for help, hoping that Marin would force Da Vinci to agree. But how could Marin do that? Ada should accompany him. Who told Ada to be with him? But it would be a bit embarrassing to accompany these guys. Marin thought about it, and finally said to the knights, let's do this, Sir Da Vinci is also a person of status, it is unrealistic for him to accompany you. But you can find someone who plays the piano well and learn this song from him. When the time comes, these people can follow you to pick up girls at any time and help you accompany them, isn't that a happy ending? Yes, why didn't I think of it? The young knights immediately realized it. It was indeed too much to ask Da Vinci, a hereditary knight, to accompany them when picking up girls. However, if they find someone to learn this song with Da Vinci, they will not have to worry about the lack of accompaniment in the future. Anyway, these knights all have fiefs, and with a good harvest, they all have money. So, they began to recruit people who played the piano well as retainers. And in this era, many people who played the piano well were bards. As a result, this group of young people recruited most of the bards on the market. Then, this group of bards who were accepted for recruitment were sent to Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci was not happy at first, but he was also afraid that these anxious young knights would break his old bones. So, Leonardo da Vinci reluctantly began to teach these bards music scores and the 5-line notation. Fortunately, these bards who played the violin well all had a solid musical foundation and learned quickly. Therefore, it didn't take long for this group of bards to learn to play the violin and play, He is a Knight, on the violin. Then, these bards began to travel around the cities of the East Frisian county during the weekends with this group of funny young knights, and began their pretending career. The cheerful and exciting beautiful tunes, coupled with the luxurious silver-white armor, and the cloak embroidered with a black cross on the back, combined with the cool moves learned from Marin, these showy young knights soon received screams from the girls. Of course, at the same time at that time, this divine song, said to be composed by Count Marin, quickly spread throughout East Frisia and became very famous. So, although Marin was no longer in the world was full of his legends. Even some wandering bards took the opportunity to learn this song, imitated the violin, and brought this divine song to places outside the East Frisian counties. Now, these bards always like to play a very nice song, He is a Knight, before reciting poems and bragging, and play a section for Marin before getting to the point. And because the song is so beautiful, it always attracts many listeners. Later, wandering gypsies also learned this song and brought it to all parts of Europe, which also increased Marin's reputation throughout Europe.